Thank you, Benny. My name's Kyle. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is June 10th, 2018. For some reason, I always get that year wrong. And I'll try and get to that part of the story if I don't trip up with the early part. So I'm an only child. Both of my parents drank. It's not so much, I'm framing things more to point out what it felt like on the inside and how I reacted to my situation than to point fingers. I would say part of what was going on growing up had to do with being in an alcoholic household, and I also had a pretty inappropriately close relationship with my mother growing up, which was fine when I was a kid. I was all over that. I loved it. The problem was when I was trying to differentiate myself and become a more grown-up guy. Let's just say that I felt responsible for hurting her feelings so deeply that I thought she was going to die. Let's put it that way. She was really scared of separation. And so I took on the role of being a caretaker and really having a hard time having my own identity. It also, frankly, affected my sexuality because there was stuff going on there with first wave feminism and some women's groups that would actually meet in our living room sometimes, and they would be doing some bad talk about the guys in their lives and kind of spreading it around to all men. And I remember at one point, one of them turning to me as I walked into the living room and going, "Oh, but we don't mean you, Kyle." And I was prepubescent at the time, but it made it hard to transition into being a guy, getting pubescent and beyond. I would say also, we never had this diagnosed, but I did an amateur diagnosis of my mother about 15 years ago, and she self-diagnosed a year ago, and I think she'd be open about this, as having, being somewhere on the borderline personality spectrum, which, a lot of stuff with boundaries, a lot of stuff with abandonment there. The one other thing I will add, I didn't discover it until later, but this fed into my sense of isolation. I've got a lot of the same fears and beliefs that I think we all identify with about being unworthy, unlovable. I had one in particular that went deeper, and it had to do with I feel like I'm a monster inside, and my character defects kind of rise out of these deep beliefs. It wasn't until my later 20s, my mid-20s, when I just had this aha moment talking with someone my first time into the AA fellowship, where I just went, oh my God, I think I was molested when I was a kid. And I don't have any conscious memories of it, but what I have are a whole lot of clues. I feel it in my body. I feel it in my bones. Whenever anybody shares about that kind of topic, I get this icky feeling inside, and I just know. I just know. And then I kind of go under with it and suppress it and don't think about it until the next time it comes up. So especially to any guys who suspect that or have that, I'm here to talk to. The only drunk-a-log thing I'm really going to get into was who forgets their first time. I think I was 11. If I remember right. We had a Zen priest fly over from Japan and was staying with us. And he got drunk every night that he was with us. Warm sake, that was his thing. And I got to taste it. I could have had more than a taste if I could actually stomach the stuff. I actually hated it, the taste of it. I do remember the kind of the warm feeling that I would get from the alcohol, though. And I think it did whet my thirst. When it came to the wedding day, that took place out in some woods outside of Atlanta. And they had a couple of different alcohol stations. One had a hollowed out watermelon with some kind of punch in it. And I think there was wine at another table. I just wandered back and forth. I think I had 5 of each in less than an hour, having no idea the effect it would have on me. And it started out really warm. I had a floaty feeling. I was happy suddenly, and our family was already turmoil, so that was really a relief. And I loved the taste, and I loved the effect for about 20 minutes. Then I couldn't stand up. Well, could barely. I got to that state. Long story short on that, my parents poured me into the car sooner than they wanted to go. They got me home. I had bed spins that night and horrible, horrible hangover the next day. And I swore off. I said, I'm never going to do that again. And why did my parents do that? And that was fine for about maybe 4 years, you know. Get into high school and things changed, party scene. I got into AA by way of Al-Anon. My drinking was rarely, if ever, normal, and I knew that. And I swore that I would never be an alcoholic like either of my parents. But I didn't actually come up with the word alcoholic until I was 22 and got really stressed out, landed in a psychiatric hospital for a week, and got this list of 20 characteristics of adult children of alcoholics. And I went, oh my God, they're reading my mind, and I thought I was the only one. And I started to go to Al-Anon meetings and to call my parents alcoholics. And I went, that's why I'm the way I am. And my thirst kind of diminished for a while. However, I went to graduate school and in philosophy, no less. And if you know anything about philosophers, they love to drink. So there were wild party times in graduate school, and I drifted away from the Al-Anon program. Then I had a really bad breakup, dropped out of school, came home, and crawled inside a vodka bottle for a summer. That's the short version of it. I still question whether I was an alcoholic, but I thought that I should check out AA. That was about, and after I went to AA for a few months, that's when I had the revelation, oh my gosh, I think I was molested. And for whatever reason, my thirst, my desire to drink went straight out the window. But what replaced it was this obsession with figuring out what happened to me. Why, dig. And the common element in all of this, or the breakup, this, that, and the other, is I was looking outside of me for both the problem to what was wrong with me and looking outside of me for the solution too. I would say I probably wasn't a full-blown alcoholic at this point, even though I was going to AA. I think the only reason that I postponed getting to be an alcoholic is I was juggling a lot of addictions, everything from food, cigarettes, cocaine one summer, sex, relationships, codependency. Is there anything I'm leaving out there? Oh, school, work also. And it was like a game of whack-a-mole. It was like whenever any one of them seemed to be getting too intensely addictive, I'd switch to something else. And that worked for a while. Fast forward again, really when this started to take hold was in my late 30s, around 2001. I was getting increasingly more isolated. My best friend had gotten married and we kind of fell on out, and I didn't have too many friends. I started to binge drink more, got into exercise. That was another thing I got addicted to until the alcohol took over. That was go on a bike ride, group bike ride, have a couple of beers, then it turned into have a couple of beers, pick up a six-pack on the way home, then switch over to high grav on the way home, and then just drop the bike riding altogether because it was getting in the way of my drinking. Through the 2000 to 2010 period, I was in and out of AA maybe 3 times. I managed to accumulate a year of sobriety, a year plus, maybe a year and a half, somewhere along the way with the Clarkston group. And then I just got to a point of despair where the next time I went back to drinking, I knew I was an alcoholic, and I frankly had given up on getting better or even living well, and I was just going to drink myself to death slowly. Honestly, I had no idea what an alcoholic death looked like. I've heard more in these rooms since I've come back, and it isn't pretty. But I romanticized it and just decided that was the way I was going to go. That brings me to what happened. What happened was around January 2016, I finally decided I wanted to live again. And I knew I still had this drinking problem. I very much wanted to quit, but I had a huge resentment against AA. I had a huge resentment against God. I didn't think either of them worked for me, and I was going to quit on my own. So I spent from January through September trying to do that very thing. Successfully, 3 or 4 times a month, which meant I detoxed 3 or 4 times a month. In amongst all of this, I would be, I'd go through a 3 or 4 day binge. I was still working. I've never lost my job, but I would stay up until 2 o'clock in the morning or even later, drinking and drag myself into work or not, call in sick. I would swear off the alcohol earnestly. I'm not going to drink anymore, which lasted until about noon the next day. and then all of a sudden my brain flipped, and it was all I could think of: when can I get to the liquor store? When is this work day going to be over? No one ever confronted me at work for whatever reason. The tipping point for me was I'd taken a lot of sick days, and I felt like it was going to stick out like a sore thumb if I did too many more. So I got rip-roaring drunk one night in late September. I didn't sleep at all. I think I might have been up drinking until 4, and I dragged myself into work at about 7. My face was red as a beet. It was like rosacea. It was coming out of my pores, the smell of the alcohol, and I just knew this was going to be it. Somebody's going to see me, talk to me. They're going to call me on it, and next thing you know, I'm going to be, sent to rehab or whatever. I was just deadly scared of that. What happened that day? I didn't see anybody. I work in a room with one other person. I manage a team, but the rest of them are in like satellite offices. My cohort who works in the room, she called in sick that day. I thought I would see my boss for sure. He was around, but I didn't see him at all. And I just had this, I don't know, what do you want to call it? Is that a form of grace? I don't know. I guess it was kind of like a foxhole gratitude prayer. I was amazed that I got through that day, and I swore that I was going to go to a meeting, finally, which I didn't do that night. It took me 2 days to get to a meeting, and it was the Grateful Group. I got there, and I was scared to death, and lo and behold, who should be there but someone I knew from high school who I didn't even know was in the program. That was a real comfort to me, although I was still terrified, and I think I did share. I did reach out and share that meeting, but I don't remember what I said. I talked to Heather after the meeting for about half an hour, and I don't remember what else she said. It was really comforting, except the one thing at the end, which was, Kyle, you've got to put your sobriety first. And I've been talking to her about my ins and outs and some of my story, and it really struck me. I've never put my sobriety first. So I proceeded to go to meetings. I found my way here pretty quickly, and to the men's meeting where I picked up a network. I thought I was doing everything right and putting my sobriety first. Turns out I wasn't really, because I didn't know what that meant until later. So I was at step 0 for a long time and doing a 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I was still trying to save face. So I'm one of the ones who I didn't lose the job, the car, the house. I didn't have to deal with the family because I wasn't married, and I had the resources to pay for my drinking. I didn't realize until much later that I was scared of losing my job, my reputation, this, that, and the other, and all of that I was still putting in front of my sobriety. And it didn't occur to me until, it took me 22 months. I was picking up white chips for 22 months. I've lost count of how many. I was drinking in between meetings. I was always going to meetings. I got a service position, doing the coffee. I was connected to a network of guys. I got a sponsor and was working with them, and I was befuddled. I had no idea why I kept picking up the drink. We get to June 10th, 2018. That was the day I attended the 77th anniversary dinner supporting the central office in Buckhead. And I was about to do some outside medical treatment. I was waiting on that. It was like the process to get ready for that was like 3 months, involving blood tests and other tests. And I was tired of waiting. And also, I was thirsty. And all along the way here, I was taking these sobriety vacations. It's like these in-between meeting things. It would be like, oh, I have 2 days where I'm not going to be accountable. I'm not truly convinced that I'm an alcoholic, so let's squeeze a couple in, and I'll come back to meetings, which I did. This was the last time I did that. I dropped somebody off the night before after I'd gone to a meeting, went straight to a liquor store, picked up a 6-pack, got not rip-roaring, but good and saucy, and then showed up the next day at the anniversary dinner. It was readily apparent to everybody that I was with that I'd been drinking the night before. I completely forgot what I was in for, though, and this is the part Benny's been waiting to hear from. Yeah. So I'd been to one of these before, and I don't know if you've ever been to the anniversary dinner, but one of the things they do is a count up and a count down. When they announced it, I went, I'm going to curse, because these were my words. I just went, oh shit. So they had everyone with less than 30 days sobriety stand up and then, or no, everybody stand up, and then everybody with less than 30 days sit down. And the last person standing was the person with the most sobriety in the room. Then they flipped it. They flipped the script. Guess who was the last person standing with the least sobriety in the room? So no, that wasn't the end of the recognition. They had a gift for me. This is a signed reprint of the first edition of Alcoholics Anonymous, signed by Helen from the central office. Now, I had to walk up to the stage in front of 500 people with Megan going, "This is the one! This is the one you gotta keep, this white chip!" Helen doesn't like hugs from strangers, by the way, but I was so nervous. Anyway, I hugged Helen. And I'm probably one of the few people who can say that. Whew. I was really at my bottom. This is the point at which I was willing to put my sobriety before everything, but I was completely demoralized and out of ideas. I went over to Megan and Patrick's house that night because I was scared to be alone. I sat on their porch and talked with them for like 2 or 3 hours until I felt safe to go home. And for the first time, I was willing to do anything to get sober, but I had no idea what to do. And if it cost me my job, so be it. If it cost me where I was living, so be it. And what I've come to learn since then is you don't necessarily have to give up all those things if you still have them, but having the willingness to let go of whatever you have is crucial. You may well get to keep it, but the willingness is key. So that got me to step 1, finally, after 22 months. Step 2 and 3, that's an interesting story too. A friend, I was going to one of these medical treatments in a car, and a friend was talking to me on the phone while I was driving. And I finally had gotten to the point where I was really honest about why I was having trouble with step 2. I thought I was having trouble with step 3, but it was really step 2. The part at the end of How It Works where it says God could and would if he were sought, that's my preferred version of the second step because it includes both the could and the would, and I had problems with both of them. I was sharing with him that I didn't think God could because I'm too broken. It was the first time I had been that honest with anyone about it. And I didn't think that God would because I didn't deserve it. His answer was, "You're being so arrogant." I snapped. I threw the phone onto the seat, didn't hang up on him, and I started yelling a stream of obscenities at him. And it actually turned out to be a God moment. If he had said that a few weeks earlier, I probably would have hung up and never talked to him again, but he just managed to hit the right nerve at the right time and provoked me into being much more honest about where I was coming from. The truth is, I was arrogant. I am arrogant. It's part of my shadow side that I don't even want to admit to myself that I have as a character defect. And he was able to provoke it out. I don't necessarily recommend that as a technique. It worked in this case, but that worked for me. It cracked the door of willingness for me, so I slid right over into the third step and actually turned it over at that point. Interestingly, I'd always thought of grace as it was a mystery, and it was always seemed to be an outside thing, like circumstances happen that are favorable to me or to someone else that I didn't merit or didn't deserve. But this is the first time I got a hint of grace as an inside job, because I'd never really, going back to the background, the framing I did at the beginning, I've had huge lifelong issues with trust. Trusting others, trusting God, because to touch the pain and heal and grieve that stuff, it takes a hell of a lot of trust to do it. And up till that point, I wasn't willing to do it. But that was the turning point, so I started to. 4 and 5. When I got around to 4 and 5, it wasn't my first time doing the fourth step. It was probably my fourth. I actually did one with Ken earlier. That was before this stuff happened, and I needed to do another one, and I had another sponsor at the time. And I also realized now that I had more than one addiction at play, that the codependency and the sex and love stuff was at least as strong in my life as the alcohol, and they were interplaying with each other. So one would trigger the drinking would trigger the other, and I needed to consider working them both. So I spent some time in some sister fellowships, specifically so that I could do a 4-step that was more all-inclusive. After that, I stepped back into AA because I didn't feel that working 2 programs at the same time was going to work for me. I really needed to keep it focused on AA, the mothership. So yeah, I'd already done, I mean, if you haven't done a 4-step before, my first 4-step, and I recommend anybody's first 4-step, you take care of the hair on fire stuff, the stuff that's going to send you back out, the secrets you were going to take to your grave. And I'd already done that. For me to do a thorough one, I poked around a while. I didn't follow my sponsor's instructions, actually, because I did some research online, and I came across a speaker you may have heard of, Mark Houston. He's done a workshop, a series of workshops called The Theater of the Lie, around how to do the 4-step. Since I am really good at hiding the truth from myself, I don't like to take a look at my own shadow. I don't like to admit myself. If I can't be honest with myself, I can't be honest with anybody else. And I needed a process that would help me tease out what's really going on with Kyle. And this Theater of the Lie stuff actually gave me a way to tap into that and then get that stream of consciousness out into a 4-step inventory. Well, actually, the sense of relief, I forgot about that. The sense of relief after doing the 5th step wasn't really there, but I do remember that the quiet hour that they talk about in the big book, quiet hour to reflect, have I done a firm foundation and get in touch with my higher power, that was really profound for me after doing that process. 6 and 7, it's not a one and done. I'm going to be doing that one for a lifetime. I'm still coming to appreciate how I absolutely don't have the power to let go of my character defects. I even had a recent revelation about that, which is more about meditation. I'll talk about that in a minute. I've always been good at doing restraint of pen and tongue because I swore that I wasn't going to turn out like my parents and I wasn't going to cause wreckage in other people's lives. I largely avoided doing that. Flip side, I ended up being a people pleaser, and I also isolated quite a lot. The restraint thing, not so bad. I can and do also act as if I don't have the character defect and see what happens. I find that to be really fruitful. I don't think it uproots my character defects, though, just on its own, because I really need the conscious contact with the higher power to get that done. When it came to 8 and 9, I mean, as I alluded, I honestly, 8 and 9, I had a couple of actual amends that I needed to do. I'd been in the program before. I'd already done a few of the older ones. Mostly my 8 and 9 was a manner of living an amended life rather than making amends for messes that I'd made. I have some letters that I've written. I have them in my pocket after talking, well, not literally, but after talking with my sponsor, it was one of those cases, well, you really don't want to mess around with like old girlfriends who are now married and have children, or other things like that, but if approached. So I've done some thinking and some writing, and I'm ready to have an amends conversation if the situation presents itself, but it doesn't seem like those are appropriate situations for, it would be me out of my ego if I actually made the approach myself. 10, I'm not big, I do the morning stuff, I don't really do the evening inventory. What I do is during the day, pause when agitated or doubtful. I've got a spiritual mentor that I listen to on YouTube and podcasts and stuff like that, who refers to it as the sacred pause. And it relates to meditation too. It's if I can actually pause long enough when I'm disturbed or agitated, and if I'm lucky enough to tap into my higher power while I'm doing it, I have a chance of actually taking an action that isn't out of self or out of ego. And if I'm especially disturbed, I pick up the phone and call somebody, my sponsor, anybody in my network, because I need input in order to know what the next right action is to do. Step 11, I do a lot of meditation. I can't say it's an everyday practice, it's not. And I won't say a whole lot about it except something that happened to me recently which struck me about, which is about grace. And it's actually connected to prayer. So improving my conscious contact with my higher power. Those deep beliefs about being a monster, being unworthy, unlovable, those themselves, they aren't my character defects, but they do drive them, And the fears connected around not wanting to be like that. I recently, I was doing some reading and I realized it was a reading about sitting still and not doing anything. I don't need to do anything to be lovable, to be worthy, to be okay. I can't get there myself, but by being still and resisting the urge, which is like in every fiber of my being to do something. You ever heard the expression, don't just do something, sit there? It's one of my favorites. At any rate, I want to do something. I want to do something to be worthy, to earn it somehow. But sitting still and letting it be, and letting my higher power, that's where the grace thing actually comes in. I don't have the power to lift my character defects or to lift these deep beliefs that I have, but I can invite something in, and I did recently, and I'm feeling the grip of those beliefs loosen, and I get some relief from it. That's not a one and done either, but I'm finally realizing that in line with the 11th step, there's a process that I can work on having to do with my higher power that actually will provide me some relief with this and hopefully will alleviate my character defects too. 12th step, I'm still awakening. I'm awakening to the fact that it's the hour is closing here too. I mentioned I do have a sponsee, first time. I love it. He keeps me accountable. He reminds me what it was like, and I have a great forgetter. I think a lot of us do, if not all of us. In terms of also step 12 being a service, I mean, I hope my story has been of service. I've tried not to be an ego about this. If anything, my ego is yapping back here. It's like, oh my God, now you've done it. You've exposed yourself. You shouldn't have done this. But I hope my story has been useful to at least someone in the room. What's it like now? I'd say the 9th step promises are largely coming true for me. I feel a lot of gratitude, a lot of gratitude. I feel like a part of me that either was completely missing or even I thought of it as being dead has been brought back to life. Therapy didn't do it. It was by the grace of this program, this fellowship, and my higher power. And what I brought to it was enough willingness to let it work. And I feel like I'm coming to life again. And I never thought it was possible. I'm willing to trust again. Not every day, I have bad days too, but I'm willing to trust. And when my trust isn't quite there and I've had a couple of sober bottoms, depression, at least I have enough faith not to pick up a drink and to know that there will be an end to this black period that I'm going through, where I have no contact with my higher power. And I pick up the tools of the program and I use them until I actually get through the depression or whatever it is that's going on. That's pretty much it, except I'd like to close with a quote, which is really about the sacred pause, I think. It's by an author named Robert Capon, or Capon. And it is by bearing for love the uncertainty of what we are to do that we come closest to God's deepest will for us. And I just think that captures a lot about the pause, the conscious contact, the I can't do it under my own power, how love works. There's just a lot wrapped in there. Thank you for letting me tell my story tonight. That's it.